So maybe you could start by telling us how difficult it is to secure content across a range of devices.
Well, I think it used to be difficult. Now it's exceptionally difficult. I mean, DRM has become very fragmented, and device-centric DRM, or the device that's already built into all these multi-screen devices, now is becoming the best choice, and obviously the cheapest choice for both the consumer and the operators to use whatever's on the device. So from a world where you thought maybe PlayReady would rule the world and be sort of a common DRM, it now looks like it's diversifying. So you need PlayReady, you need Widevine, maybe you even need FairPlay or even Adobe Access to access all the different devices. So it's getting even more complicated.
So how does it differ between closed pay TV networks and online services? Like, how are the requirements different?
Well, for a closed pay TV network, depending on if it's a two-way network or a one-way network, obviously if it's a traditional broadcast network, you need a service that can work without a return channel. So that becomes the basic, the conditional access. That's where the TV services excel. Now, as soon as you start connecting this to a multi-screen device, the difference between this conditional access and a DRM is actually quite a lot. DRM says, what can you do with the content once it's downloaded to a device, or once you take your content into a different environment? So the idea here is actually being able to manage both and combining all these services on a managed device.
Okay. And how can operators best cope with multiple DRMs? And is that going to get easier over time?
Well, one quick question to that would be, or one answer would be, come to us, of course. But in general terms, what needs to, there are luckily open standards now approaching. So there's been consumer constraints and consumer challenges, because if you want to run video content in a browser, historically you'd use plugins. So Internet Explorer would download the Silverlight plugin, Chrome would download a plugin. Now, luckily, and also as a challenge, the support for plugins now is being dropped. So Google Chrome, as of September, will no longer support plugins. So unless you figure out how to solve this, the user will have to swap browser, which typically he doesn't like. So the answer to that is the new open standard. So you have a common encryption, you have MPEG-Dash, we can support multiple conditional DRM formats, and then you have HTML5. And this is where the industry and players like Conax can actually make a difference and be the single key master of all the keys for all the different DRMs. And hence, by not doing this at home, but contacting people or companies that are experts on this, I think will make life easier for the operator.
Okay. And what about the security requirements for ultra high definition content? How does that differ?
Again, the requirements are so far guidelines. There are a couple of key challenges. There's a hardware root of trust requirement. So for a company like Conax, we have technology in the group, which gives hardware root of trust in all the managed devices and also the chipsets inside the set-top boxes. But to get hardware root of trust access in maybe an iOS device, in an Apple device, or in a Google device is more of a challenge. So that's one issue you need to solve. The other issue is watermarking. Again, technology which nobody yet figures out how to capitalize on, who will actually pay for the watermarking. But we are also working quite efficiently with watermarking, and we'll demo that at IBC this year. The third is you need to support HDCP 2.2. If not, there's actually some hacks, means the content can leak. So there are a couple of care-abouts that you need to comply with in order to fully support all the requirements for 4K.
Okay, and just finally, what would you say Conax's main aims are for this year, and what are your biggest challenges going to be?
Well, challenges are very often opportunities. Our challenge was to figure out how do we actually capitalize on DRM in this very challenging market. And because this turned out to be so complicated to get a DRM, work with a player, work with an OS, and work with a device, we thought this is going to be almost impossible for the operator that doesn't have the experience in security as we do. So we basically we have created a solution where you, as I mentioned, you have a single key server, and we manage all this complexity for the operator. I think that's going to be a game changer for the operator. The second is we're launching also later this year a hybrid conditional access and DRM product for a two-way solution. I think that's going to be the next wave in how to secure connected devices.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you very much.